behold the altar of the great goddess Vesta. Hey 2Vs, this is Psychic Bob. Well, here I am at my hearth altar. And a number of you have been writing saying, Psychic Bob, tell us more about hearth deities or hearth magic. And you know, when I set my hearth, I originally had Bridget here. But since then, I've discovered I have a very great draw to the ancient goddess Vesta. Behind me is a statue here of the goddess Vesta. Vesta is the Roman form of the goddess from ancient Greece who was called Hestia. Hestia was the goddess of Hestia was worshipped throughout ancient Greece as the goddess of the hearth. Her worship was rather informal. Basically, every home had a hearth, and Vesta was honored in it. As you'll see here, our modern hearths, since most of us don't have big fireplaces and cook at the fireplace, we create a modern hearth. And I did a video on this. Back here, you'll notice this candle burning. This is actually my Vesta flame. For the worship of Vesta, it's important to have a flame that you always burn. The flame was the symbol of Hestia, and when the Romans adopted her worship, they named her Vesta and continued the tradition of the eternal flame. The difference of Vesta's worship as opposed to Hestia's was that, as I said, Hestia was more informal. Her worship was done mostly at the home. There were public altars to her, but it was in a much more casual system. When the Romans adopted Hestia and named her Vesta, they formalized her worship. They had a temple in Rome that was attended by priestesses called the Vestal Virgins, and they kept an eternal flame going, similar to what I have here. It was a much larger flame, though. And it was believed that if the flame ever went out, that it would spell doom and destruction for the Roman Empire. So the worship of Vesta became very serious business. In fact, the priestesses of Vesta, they were only allowed to have female priestesses because Vesta was considered a virgin goddess and could not be looked upon by a man in the temple. These days, though, men all over the world are able to worship Vesta. I discovered upon my research that Vesta was worshipped by men in the home. Though men could not go to her public temple, she did accept their worship in the home. And so, since I'm a male, I worship Vesta in my home. We may someday see the return of a formal Vesta temple. And I'm curious, I wonder if when it comes, if they'll have men attending to her. It seems that Vesta does love her male devotees. So, as you can see here, I've set my altar. Now, if you want to set an altar to Vesta, it's very simple. Doesn't require a lot of complexity. But let me give you a little tour and I'll show you what you need. First and foremost, if you're going to have a shrine to Vesta, you must have a Vesta flame. The Latin name is Flamme Vestae. And traditionally, it's people use red candle or a red votive, or white. Now I have actually a white candle, which is appropriate for Vesta worship. And I have it in a red holder. So this honors the red and white themes. Interestingly, the goddess Bridget, who is also a goddess of the flame, her colors are red and white. I just find it interesting. So you can have a red candle or a white candle. And in this case, I have a red holder. You can have whatever color candle holder you want, but that's the tradition there. You can have other candles on the altar. Today I don't have other candles, but if you do have other candles, they should be either smaller than the Vesta flame or of a different color. You want the Vesta flame to be recognized by its predominance. So as you can see, this is a rather large holder, and this would be predominant. Now, I also have a statue of the great goddess here, and she's dressed in traditional Roman robes of the upper class. You can see kind of a Greek long mantle, and in her hands, she holds the flame. So as you can see there, Vesta is holding the flame. Now, you do not actually have to have a statue of Vesta at your altar. The predominant thing is most people honored her through the flame. The statue is actually considered secondary in the worship of Vesta, which is kind of interesting because in traditional Roman worship, generally the statues were the most important part of the altar. But in the Vesta altar, it's actually the flame, which is considered the actual living presence of the goddess. And the statue is a secondary presence. I am fortunate to have a Vesta statue here, and I just love her. And so I put her near her sacred flame. Now, some other things that you can have are also incense on the altar. In fact, my incense just went out here, but I had incense over here in this jar. But you don't have to have incense. Again, the flame is the most important element. Now, what else did the Romans traditionally offer to Vesta? Well, the wonderful thing about this worship is it's so simple, anyone can do it. All you need are two things: flour and salt. Three things, excuse me, and olive oil. Actually, olive oil is actually considered optional. The two main standards of her worship were flour and salt. As you see, I have both here. And what they would do, the Romans, every night when they would have a mealtime, would take some salt, add it to some flour. So as you can see here, I'm taking pinch of salt, and I add it to the flour, mix it up. This is what is known as salted flour. And all you do is you offer your prayers to Vesta. You may want to give her thanksgiving for your food, thanksgiving for the day. You offer prayers to her, thanking her for her blessings of keeping your home safe. Remember, she's a goddess of the home and of the hearth. You know, when I gather here, this is actually is a fireplace, though it's not on at the moment. It's a place of safety and warmth. So wherever your place of safety and warmth is, it doesn't have to be a fireplace, but it should have a Vesta light, and that will create your hearth. Then you want to just take a pinch of the salted flour, and you simply offer your prayer, and you say, Dear Vesta, receive my offering. And you sprinkle the salted flour in the flame. Simple as that. And Vesta will receive your offering. And you can do it a few times if you want. If you have a family or you live with somebody, you can each offer your oblations to Vesta and just sprinkle the salted flour in her flame. And offer it with thanksgiving and prayer. Now, the other thing that you can do is offer an oblation of oil. It was traditional for Romans to offer olive oil to the goddess Vesta. They would also offer wine. You can either offer wine or olive oil, or all both. But the bare minimum is the salted flour. But if you really love Vesta and you want to give her something, you can then offer a little bit of oil into the flame. And again, you offer it with a prayer. Great Goddess Vesta, receive our offering, our oblation. May our prayers be heard, and may you be nourished by this offering. We thank you for your blessing. So mote it be. And then just pour a little oil in the flame. Oops, I almost drowned this flame out. Luckily, olive oil will burn. And there it goes. So we've offered a wonderful little oblation to the goddess Vesta. So as you can see, it's very simple, her worship, not at all complex. I recently discovered a group that has formed called Flamme Vestae, and they are trying to revive the worship of Vesta throughout the world. And it's from them that I learned about the salt and flour and oil offerings. They suggest some people, though, may not have the ability because of the setup that they have to offer salted flour. And they offer another alternative, which according to them was also done by the ancient Romans. And that is the offering of bread. I'll put the link in the link to their website below, and they have films that you can see how this is done. But basically, what I've purchased for this, and they recommend this, are small communion wafers. You can buy these from any church supply store. Just look up communion bread or altar breads. And these are very similar to what the ancient Romans would offer. So if you don't want to offer the salt and the flour, and it's too messy for you, because it does require to clean the altar regularly, this is a cleaner, lighter alternative. And basically, you take the bread and you wave it through the flame of the candle and you offer it to the goddess. and then you put it in another container, and then you save it. Now, what I like to do with my offering is, after I offer it, I'll take it out and crumble it and offer it to the birds. So, or you can consume it yourself. But this is another way, and it's simply, as I said, you take the bread, you offer it to the goddess, and you pass it through the flame. Remember, the flame is her presence, so it's as if the flame absorbs the essence of your offering. This is another way to honor the great goddess Vesta. So as you can see, the worship of Vesta is very simple, yet very beautiful. And this is something that, if you decide to take up the worship of Vesta, you can do as a daily ritual. Now, some people do offerings to Vesta once a week or a few times a week. I myself like to do it daily because I feel this builds a strong rapport with the goddess. Now, remember, as I said, you do not have to have an expensive statue. You could even have a picture of Vesta, or if you prefer not to have that, just simply the flame alone. But the flame alone for Vesta should only be lit for her worship. It should not be just used for, companies coming over, we want to have a nice light. This is a sacred flame. Now, some people are going to say, well, Bob, I heard that the flame of Vesta has to burn perpetually. In an ideal situation, that would be a wonderful thing. But in our modern world, most of us are at work. In the ancient days, people stayed at home all day and they could tend to the flame of Vesta, just like the priestesses in the temple. But today it is not accepted, or it is not it is not suggested that you leave your flame burning unless you're actually with it. Where I live in a condominium complex, a high-rise with many apartments. And if I were to leave my flame of Vesta unattended and it should shatter, the glass should shatter, a fire should start, I would endanger many people around me. So out of reverence for life and for those other people who may not be so eager for my worship, I do extinguish the flame at the end of my worship. But remember, the flame of Vesta is really, the true flame is in your heart. So if you want to worship Vesta, also, as you light your hearth flame, light the flame to Vesta in your heart. What's very interesting is in the worship of Vesta, it went on for many years. And it wasn't until about the year 300, 400, I forget the exact year, that the Christian church outlawed the worship of Vesta. Theodosius, who was a Roman emperor who became a Christian, closed the temple of the goddess Vesta. He went in, he had the priest extinguish the flame of the goddess and dismantled her temple. The marble was stripped from the walls of her temple to be given to help build churches. Now, as a pagan, I find this greatly disturbing and offensive. But the wonderful thing is that even though Vesta's worship was outwardly destroyed, many people still retained inside their hearts that flame of Vesta. And in their own home, they would keep the flame going. Interestingly, during that time when the worship was formally abolished by the Christian church, people risked their lives to worship Vesta. Sometimes people from the church would go house to house, and if a house was found to have the flame of Vesta burning, the people could be tried and even executed. We've come a long way since then, I hope, at least in the United States. And so today I encourage anybody who has a draw to this goddess, if you feel called to explore the worship of Vesta, help us, help relight the flame of Vesta. I'll put a link in the website, a website link below in the info box. This group, Flamme Vestae, actually have a flame burning that has burned perpetually since the time of the Roman times. This flame was, from what I understand, passed down perpetually, and there is a lady who has a remnant of the original flame, and she does make candles for people. And what she does is she lights the candles with the original flame. Of course, she has to then put it out and mail you the candle. But the candle was touched to the original flame of Vesta. And when you relight it, it's believed that the candle, the energy of that flame is with you. Now, you don't have to do that to have the flame of Vesta in your house. All you have to do is dedicate your sacred candle to the goddess, and it will be the flame of Vesta. Interestingly, I also learned that the Roman Catholic Church, people within the church who still believed in the flame of Vesta, snuck it back into the worship. And you're going to say, really, how'd they do that? Well, if you look at a picture of the Immaculate Heart of Mary, in fact, I'll put a picture up here. You will notice that in Mary's heart there is a flame. It is believed that Mary assumed many of the duties and roles of the goddess Vesta, for she became very much a hearth goddess in the Christian homes. And her Immaculate Heart's flame really is actually the flame of Vesta. So you see, the goddess is eternal, and even though they tried to destroy her, she reappeared in a new form. So if you're not sure about Vesta, but maybe you love the Virgin Mary, you might consider adopting her as a hearth goddess as well, with her Immaculate Heart and flame. This also, I feel, is very valid. So whether you worship her as the Immaculate Heart of Mary or as the original form of the goddess Vesta, know that the great goddess, her eternal flame burns. It is the flame of life. It is the flame of joy. It is the flame of warmth, the flame of protection. So I encourage you, consider if you're looking for a goddess, you might want to explore Vesta and her sacred flame. Well, guys, I am so glad you came here today. I hope this has been helpful for you. Listen, tell me in the box below, have you ever heard of Vesta? Are you familiar with her worship? Have you ever worshipped, or maybe you have already have a devotion to Vesta? I'd love to hear about it. Tell me if you find this interesting. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Well, guys, thanks for being here. I send you my blessings. Keep it here at Spirit Channel. By the way, if you want to support us, like this video, favorite, share it with your friends. Let's get the word out about Spirit Channel. And if you can, hit subscribe. Be part of our channel. We'd sure love you to be here. Well, guys, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for taking the time to come out and learn about the worship of Vesta. I'm going to go back and meditate tonight on this sacred flame, and I'll share more of my insights that I receive from the goddess in the coming days. Thank you for being here. Blessed be.